All right, we are here today to talk about that little fella right there, the Taurus GX4, which is the micro compact, which my wife again took one look at it and said, oh, that's cute. So the GX4 is Taurus's entry into the micro compact world. They've got the G3, the G3C, like this one right here, that's the compact version. But the GX4 definitely has a couple of things that are a little bit better than the G3, one of which is going to be the trigger. So we'll take a good look at this. If you've never seen a Taurus trigger before on their polymer setups, wall, pretty solid brake there. Here's the reset. Right there, brake one more time. A little quicker for you. So take that, keep that in your mind, and compare that to that. That is the trigger pull on the G3. You get a brake and then you've kind of got that restrike thing, right? But then the reset, not terrible once you get through the initial pull and reset, but that GX4 has a far better feeling trigger. Although it's a tad bit heavy, but it is a micro compact. So we will talk about that one problem that I did have out there on the range. It's pretty funny, managed to catch it on camera, and you can clearly see. You couldn't see it while you were out there, but you can clearly see what's going on camera. So a little bit of a QC issue there, but there is a lot of other good stuff going on with the GX4, including how it's kind of a more modular design, almost like the SIG. So we're gonna go ahead and get into the specs on this, check it out, do the trigger pulls, talk about how the trigger system in this thing actually works, and do all the good stuff that you guys want to see. So we're going to get up close and personal to the GX4 right now. All right, so we're going to get into the Taurus GX4 right here, which my wife likes to refer to as cute. I like to refer to it as just a comfortable carry. So we're going to talk about what we get in the box with this thing first off, because there's some important stuff in here. Okay, obviously we're gonna get our little pistola right there. You're gonna get your second 11 round magazine right there. Should have came with a third, hopefully it was be the 15er. You get a secondary back strap right there. You're going to get a little keychain right here, which also happens to be a tool. You'll see right there, that's actually a flat screwdriver, which you need to break this thing down, and we're gonna keep. You'll get your manuals, a warranty card, and your lock. So we'll go ahead, put this thing to the side for now, and we are going to get into the main specs on this thing so you guys have a good understanding of kind of how big this is, how big this is, what it weighs, and all of that good stuff. So we know this is a striker fire pistol, 11 round capacity polymer frame here. We have a single action only trigger is what they call it. Holds 11 plus 1. There are 15 round mags available for this thing now. We have an overall barrel length here is going to be 3.06 inches, a total length, so all the way long here, 6.05, which isn't bad. And then we have a total overall height, 4.3, and then a total width right here from side to side of what they say is dead nuts 1 inch. Coming in at 18.5 ounces. Not bad at all. Firing pin block safety, all that basic striker stuff, and I will get into how the trigger works and explain that and describe how this thing is actually made, because it's a whole module in here, just much like a SIG, just slightly different. So let's go ahead and just kind of walk around this thing and talk about how this thing is. So from magwell to muzzle here, we're gonna see we have a very nice sandpaper-like texture. Got the Taurus logo. Put this mag back in here so you can kind of see it. You'll get 2 of those with the high-vis follower in case you guys want to know about that. But that kind of sandpaper texture goes all the way around, which is nice because since this thing is so small, that helps you keep control of it. And it is really grippy. So the Taurus, even the G3 stuff, I thought had great texture that just didn't have enough of it. This one, they put texture everywhere. Kind of a triangular designed mag release right there. Does a great job. Spits that mag right out, no problems there. Coming in, you're gonna see some nice kind of depressions and line work right here. Kind of help your palm get in there so you don't accidentally activate that slide stop slide release. Because this thing is so small, good area up in there to get your web of your hand really deep up in there to help control the recoil impulse. Single-sided mag and release for the slide there. Not dual controls on here, but that's kind of tough to ask out of a micro sometimes. Not really a kind of a undercut right there, but it's nice and smooth and rounded off when it comes to underneath the trigger guard there. So it's very comfortable. And the trigger guard's pretty long, which is nice because if you've got bigger hands or smaller hands, you're going to be able to fit without slipping over it like that. Like I even do that with some full-size pistols like the M and Ps. Going forward, you'll see that slide stop. It's plenty to use, even to ride that slide forward. Give you guys a look at that. Plenty to get your hand onto. This is gonna be your takedown pin right there. Serves a couple purposes. We'll talk more about that. Nicely chamfered off right here. So as you're sitting here with your hand right there, no hard edges is pretty nice right there. They could have rounded it maybe a little bit more, but good job. No rail, so you're not putting any accessories on this right now unless it's one of the clamshell designs. I think Viridian might be making something for this, but kind of is what it is. And then nicely chamfered off nose right there for holstering and unholstering. We're gonna come back to the trigger when we do the trigger pulls. On this side, you will see that slot for that tool, which is on the grip of the little keychain they gave you. External extractor, good serrations, very similar. The slide here is very similar to the kind of CZ or SIG design where it's chamfered the whole way, gets a little wider towards the front. I believe this does, this does take the Glock sight, so it's got that Glock dovetail and the Glock front style sight on there. You do have a loaded chamber indicator across the top. Pretty typical backplate design with the Taurus logo on it. And then the sights are metal, which is definitely nice because you're not even getting that out of Glock right now unless you buy the one that is a little bit more expensive that has metal sights on it. So let's go ahead and do some trigger pulls on this thing. And then we're gonna talk about how the trigger works and talk about the modularity of this thing. So this trigger is far better. So let's compare this up close, right? Do some cool, quick pulls here. So right there, you can see defined hard wall and a break. So that's pretty solid out of a Taurus, right? Not expecting that. So there's your reset, no creep and a break. Now let's compare that up close to our friend, the G3C right here, which is all creep. I mean, that's a lot. That's like an inch almost. Then you get your break. From the reset on, not terrible, but that initial pull is pretty gnarly on the G3 series as compared to this. So I kind of have to hold this up because it's so thin that the gauge will drag across the table if I don't, but I'm gonna do my best to keep it in the same spot and pull from the same place. I know it moves a little bit. And that's pretty much what I have been getting. So this trigger pulls between like 5.5 and 6 pounds, which is pretty heavy. I'll try and do it like this to keep it a little bit more stable this time. So, and I'm pulling low on it because that's where I try to get my finger. And since it's a flat trigger, that's where you can get your trigger. You can see right there, it came in right at 5.5. And we'll just do one more unless we get something crazy. So that one was actually a little over, pulled a little higher on the trigger shoe that time. So the inconsistency is me and where I'm placing the tool. 6.5. So it's a little bit of a heavy trigger, and we'll talk more about what heavy triggers can cause here in a little bit, but overall, not bad. So we talk about the trigger shoe safety. It does go just about all the way flush. There's just the tiniest bit that doesn't go flush. It's very wide and flat. It really kind of looks like the Arex Delta Gen 2 triggers. It's got that same kind of look and design to it. So not bad. Let's talk about the breakdown. So you got to lock this thing back, and then you're going to have to rotate this a quarter turn to the left or counterclockwise. And it's actually marked on there. I don't know if you'll be able to pick it up. It's very small. So you can use any flat screwdriver or this tool, and you're going to hear, I'll put this up here. it'll kind of click when you get it to the right spot right here. It kind of clicks, and that's when you know you're in the right spot. You know you've already dropped the mag, release it. You do have to pull the trigger, and you kind of pull off like that. And it's a little stiff coming off. So let's talk about the stuff in the slide first. Recoil spring guide rod assembly, little funky looking. You can see the nubber on the end right there. Tiny little barrel here. So you can look at the size of that thing. Pretty short little fella. Not doing too bad. We've got just over 100 rounds through it. Wasn't able to put a whole ton more through it, but you'll see it kind of has that collared edge all the way around the barrel right there. So looking a little bit different. As far as up in the slide, we've got pretty much everything we'd expect out of a striker fired pistol. You've got your striker block safety right here, which is your inertial safety, your standard lug on the striker right there, and then you have your extractor right here, and this is how you take your extractor out. That's actually on a pin right there. And then you can see some pretty decent wear up in here already in the coating. In my experience, these little micros and subcompacts generally show a little bit more wear a little faster than other things. So let's talk about how this trigger actually functions. So you'll see right here, you'll see the trigger bar moving, right? You'll see the lip of it going back and forth right here. So this edge, grab my little pointer tool again, that edge right there that's going back and forth, okay, is what disengages the striker block safety, which is that silver barrel right there, or the plunger safety, as a lot of people like to call it when it comes to Glock. So as that's disengaging that, you will see back here, that is your sear surface. So your striker lug is captured here. As it pulls back, it goes down, your striker goes forward, and then the slide will reciprocate. As that slide is reciprocating, you'll see this little fella right here, and listen for the click. I gotta use my fingernail as I push this down. You can kind of hear it. That is the reset of your trigger. So again, I'll pull it down, watch that sear pop back up. Kind of give you a good angle at it. Right here. You can see it pop up, slide comes back forward, striker lug grabs that, resets your trigger for you. And that little edge right there is in contact inside the slide right there. That little, rounded divot in the slide is what interfaces with that and resets the trigger. So pretty cool design. The other really cool thing about this pistol, it's kind of like the SIG. So you can see the serial plate back in there. You can pull this pin out and the entire housing and trigger all comes out. Pretty neat. So definitely a very cool design. That whole housing comes out, and that's just a crazy looking rail. That's the other thing. You see, it's just one big, massive rail as compared to other things. So very much like the SIG drop-in trigger housing group, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and talk about the good, the bad, the cost, that problem that I did have with this, and then kind of maybe compare this little mini hammer to some of the other stuff out there. Well, I gotta say, I kind of dig the little thing. So it's a micro compact. Micro compacts generally aren't the best for people with hands that kind of size up like that, but it wasn't bad at all. So I first got the chance to shoot this thing at the Iraq Veteran 8888 range day in the one in May. I didn't get to go to the most recent one because I had the you-know-what that's been going around for 18 months. So that really kind of sucked that I missed that one. But once I fired this out there, I really wanted to get one in to test out. I reached out to Taurus. They did send this one out for me to test, but other than me asking them for that, I have zero relationship with the Taurus brand. I just wanted to check it out because it actually felt pretty good out there on the range. Now, before we go any further, we are gonna talk about that problem that I did have, and we're gonna roll in some slow-mo footage here right now. I'm pretty sure you're all gonna be able to see it. So I'm gonna punch that footage in and let me know in the comments down below if you caught it. All right, well, that should have been pretty obvious. That front sight, we were out there just hammering on this thing, me, Mr. Big Kid, and Tactical Toolbox. We were out there and that sight just walked loose. So the screw in the bottom, these are just like Glock sights. It started walking out and I started shooting really low, like super low. I'd be aiming for the popper on the head and I would hit like waist area. And I'm like, man, what's going on? Well, that sight was going up and down. And as you're looking from the rear into the front, you know, you're leveling off, so you didn't realize how much taller the sight was getting as you continued to press the trigger. So a little bit of a quality control issue. I took it back out, put some Loctite on it, and it's been good to go ever since. So that is something you're definitely gonna wanna check if you get a Taurus, because that thing walked out. I wanna say it was within 100 rounds. And if I'd have kept going, that sight would have just flown right off and then I'd have been in a pretty pickle. Now, other than that, let's talk about some of the good stuff that's going on here. The first thing is that trigger is a vast improvement over the G3, the G2 series. Now, it's a little bit heavy, but let's remember, this is a micro compact. We don't want super light triggers on here. I would have liked to seen it closer to maybe 4.5, 5 pounds, but it's pulling 5.5 to 6. As you get more rounds through it, it will lighten up a little bit, but still not bad. The engagement of the trigger shoe is good, and the pull and the brake, pretty solid, especially coming out of the Taurus brand, which has not had the best triggers because they were doing that whole restrike thing. And the feel of this thing overall, you can see even with how much of my hand hangs off, that texture on there just feels really good and really solid, and it's got good angle. So the ergonomics of it are very natural. You've got those nice reference points up here. So overall, especially for how small this thing is, it feels quite good in the hand, and it's pretty controllable out there on the range when you compare it to other things that are little midget race cars like this that are generally gonna be a little bit more difficult to control than like a Glock 34 or like a 9mm 1911. These things are gonna be little snapping turtles. You're gonna know you got something small and it's gonna buck on you a little bit, so just kind of get used to it. Now, the last thing I dig is going to be the 11-round magazines. Now, they do have 15-round magazines, and this is where this becomes a positive and kind of a negative. You gave me two 11-rounders, stop being cheap and just give me the 15-round mag with it too, which is likely something they'll end up doing in the future. But right now, if you want the 15-rounder, you gotta pay $30-ish for it, probably plus shipping, until the price comes down or until they decide to actually include maybe 111 and maybe one of the big ones for this, or maybe they won't. But come on, give us what we want. Not a bad price on this overall, but give me 115, 111, and we can call this a ready to carry package. When it comes to the bad and the ugly, we talked about that sight coming loose. That's a definite negative. Quick fix, but still a negative. Quality control issue right there. The other kind of negative thing, which isn't, I guess, totally a negative, is I would like to see the trigger right at like 5 pounds, that 4.5 to 5 pound mark. So coming in at like almost 6 is a little bit heavy, and with something this small, that much of a heavy trigger pull, you could be off really quite a bit if you're not like the best or the most proficient. So you've definitely got to practice with that. Now, you know, no part is ever really gonna make up for proficiency, but a little bit of a lighter trigger would have been nice to see. And then of course, give me that 15-round mag with this thing, and it should have 3 mags with it. So maybe 2 11s and the 13. That would have been cool, but definitely should have had a bigger mag with it. Now, when it comes to comparisons between, say, the 365, the Hellcat, and the Glock 43X series, and some of the other micro stuff that's out there, or slimline stuff that's out there, people always love to complain like, oh, the slimline Glocks aren't micros. I'm like, well, it's close enough, guys. Let's just lump it in there, right? So as far as comparison, I am really gonna start comparing this to those. Hopefully I get to keep it long enough to do some videos on that. But this thing is a loaner and I do have to send it back. They ain't giving me nothing for free, but it is still pretty cool that they sent it out. Now, talking about the cost on the GX4, the way this one comes, I looked around a little bit, right in that about $399 mark. So not bad for the way that the GX4 comes outfitted. We will see the reliability, the durability, and how this thing kind of fares over time, as long as I get to keep it for a little bit longer. But I want to say that's fairly solid. Now, give me that extended mag and 2 11-round mags, and we're really gonna be talking at that $399 price point. But overall, that is still quite a bit cheaper than a lot of the other micro compact stuff out there that kind of feels and has a decent trigger like this, especially when you compare it to the SIG and the Glock stuff out there. You're saving quite a bit of money. So that is what I've got for you guys today. I hope you guys liked seeing a little bit of that GX4. I will try and get a 1,000 round review on this thing. That's gonna take a long time because putting 1,000 rounds through these things is not easy, especially when you only have 11 round magazines. If you guys are interested in anything you saw here, I'll leave that build list down below. If you wanna check out any of those affiliate links down below, all that stuff does help the channel out. Huge thank you to my patrons. You guys get out there, have some fun on the range. And remember, if you stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready, even with a micro. And I will see you guys on the next one.